Be proactive. Don't let life dictate what you have to do.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Hello Haymarket. I'm your host, Nyce, and today we have Queen Alubakala.
Say it again.
Queen Alubakala.
And bow down.
Absolutely.
No.
So, Buky, we brought you in here today because we just came back about a month ago from the family reunion event, and you decided to get certified in a new program that KW's launched. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'm excited to share that I joined the KW Planner community. And what that is a community of people that are helping seniors usually downsize their home and downsize their assets as well. So prior to joining the KW Planner community, Ali on the team and I were doing downsizing seminars and talking to seniors about how to get their homes ready for the market. That included decluttering their homes, packing it up, planning where they were going to move next, so helping them with their options of where to go. And what has happened with joining the KW Planner community is we're adding another component to that, and that's helping people protect their wealth. We spend so much time helping people build wealth in real estate, and then they get to this juncture in life, and it's time to transition into the next phase of life, and they end up giving a lot of that money to the IRS.
Of it away.
Yeah. So part of being in this community is learning how to help people protect that wealth and making sure that it stays in the family instead of going to the IRS. Of course, the IRS will get what's due.
Oh, they'll get a lot. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with minimizing tax, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of the discussion around wealth is always about wealth building, wealth creation, and there's not enough discussion around the protection of wealth. Because if there's a hole in the bucket, it doesn't matter how much water you pour in that bucket, right? If you're not able to keep any of it, what was the point?
It drains out.
And beyond that, I think in America there's a misconception that we are a very individualistic society, and I don't think that that's the case. I think what we are is a family society. And people don't scrimp and save, right? Especially, we are a nation of immigrants. People don't come here and spend their whole life just trying to get ahead so that way they can take it to the grave with them.
Right.
They do it to pass it on to their kids. And that takes planning. Hence, KW Planning.
And I'm so glad that you said that, because when you ask a lot of seniors, how much more money do you need to make to finish out your life? Of course, we don't ask that way, but
but
they've made lots. They've made more money than they need. They have more money than they have life left, and they're doing it for their children. They're doing it for their families. And what tends to happen a lot of times is people pass away. Their families inherit all the money and the properties and the wealth that they've built over the years.
And problems.
So, and then they end up fighting over this, and mom and dad didn't intend for that to happen. So instead of it bringing the family together, it pulls them apart. So that's another piece of the planning, is making sure that we help people keep their families together.
Absolutely. Like, you spend all of your life trying to create this nest egg, and you want that to be a blessing, not a burden. Speaking from some personal experience without revealing too much, I just recently went through a probate process with a family member who did not leave a will. And that required a lot of time and energy and money, frankly, from the family to try to figure out and navigate that process. And my takeaway, having firsthand experience trying to navigate that, is that much of this could have been avoided had there been proper planning taken in advance. And you'd be surprised at how many people don't have their estate planning done. And there's so many people. I mean, think about all the celebrities that have passed away recently without a will. And estate planning goes beyond a will. But even just that piece, so many people don't have that. So that's part of the conversation that we have with planning for the future. And another way that I've heard it described in the past was that everyone is on someone's plan,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
For those of us who depart from this world without having written our own plan, then you've subscribed to the government's plan.
Yeah.
And the government hasn't planned much for you or your family, right?
They plan in their favor.
They've planned their own,
Yes.
So, so it's important.
And you're at their mercy.
I was actually discussing this recently with an attorney.
Okay.
You know Matt Miggle? His sister?
Matt Maggle's an attorney?
No, Matt Maggle's sister is an attorney. And one of the questions I'd asked her at the time was, hey, when should someone consider this, right? Like, when's the right time? And she said, well, you're going to have a different discussion depending on how old someone is. But if you're 18 and you're your own legal adult now, you need to have an estate plan. Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of us have that completely backwards. We're like, let me wait until I have been given a doctor's note that I've got 6 months to live. And then by then, first of all, not everyone gets a 6 months notice.
Some people get hit by a bus, you know.
But even those of us who do have the benefit of notice, you don't want to be spending your last few days going through legal documents. You want to be cherishing the time with your family, right? And so that's why I think it's so critical to have this discussion as early as possible. And then depending upon the stage of life you're in, right? You just got married, you just bought a new house, you need to revisit the plan.
Yeah. It's a living document. You know, you are constantly revising it. When's the best time? Now. You're 18.
Yeah.
Just do it. Put it into place. When you buy your first piece of property or car or whatever it is, update it. When you get married, you're updating. When you have kids, you're updating. With each child, you're updating.
That's right. So, Buky.
Yes.
With this new certification, how is your interactions with these clients going to be different? What are you going to be adding to what you already do?
So what I don't do yet is ask, or what I haven't done in the past is ask people if they have a plan and what their plan is. I mean, that can be an uncomfortable conversation for people because it sounds like you're planning for death.
Yeah.
And yet you are planning for death.
Yeah, it's morbid.
Yeah, it's morbid. People don't like to think about that. And it's so, so important.
Yeah.
And so one of my questions with my clients is, you know, do you have your estate plan in place? And I partner with estate attorneys, you know, people that I can, if they don't have a plan in place, so someone like Matt's sister would be an example, I can put them in touch with someone that can help them get that plan in place. So that's one thing. Another thing is really asking them about the assets that they have. A lot of times we go on an appointment to maybe sell one house, and they might have other properties.
Yeah.
So one of the services that I provide is doing an asset performance test for their properties. See how their assets are performing. Are they getting the return that they want to get or that they expected to get?
Right.
Is it performing well?
Yeah.
Is their money good where it is in that asset, or should they take their money out of that asset and put it into something else?
Yeah. I think so often people who happen to have real estate got that by way of convenience. It's just they were living their life, and this is what they have at a certain age, but it wasn't a purposeful, intentional process.
Yeah.
And as you're getting ready to organize your affairs, it's about time that we get purposeful.
Yes.
Right?
Get purposeful.
Because there are very different opportunities available to you depending upon what dirt you own.
Yeah.
Right?
Very true.
Yeah. So as an example, would you rather have literally just dirt? Would you rather have something that is a multifamily property? Would you rather have something in the city or something more rural? Like there's all kinds of decisions that need to be made.
Yeah.
Right. And does keeping what you have make the most sense, or does having maybe a 1031 exchange to move it somewhere else make sense?
Right. Because in some cases, people have depreciated their properties as much as they can. And is it worth it to keep that till you die? And then your kids now have to pay all of those taxes on it? Or do you 1031 exchange that into something else and
And continue to defer the taxation.
Yeah.
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 And put your kids in a much better position. Because, I mean, somebody's going to pay the taxes.
Moment so far. Yeah.
Is that what I'm doing?
That's what we just did. We had like 5 yeahs in a row back and forth.
Yeah.
Can we actually back up and talk about depreciation for a moment?
Yes.
Because you dropped a term that a lot of people just don't know what that
Lord.
is. So when you purchase a residential property, the government allows you to take a tax write-off by depreciating the property over the course of 27 and a half years if it's a residential property. What that means is you're basically just getting a tax break for owning real estate. And that lasts 27 and a half years. And at the end of it, tax break's gone, right? And if you ever sell that property, there is something called depreciation recapture, where now you base all those taxes you saved, you gotta pay them back. You gotta pay the government back now.
Or your kids.
Or your kids,
dead.
right?
Yeah.
So one strategy that a lot of people use is they'll utilize part of the tax code called a 1031 exchange. And what this does is it allows you to continue to defer paying those taxes by selling one investment property and purchasing another.
Exactly.
And you're just moving the money from one to the other. And by doing that, you've reset the clock because now you have a new property and the clock starts at 27 and a half years again. And you can actually continue doing that until you pass away. And when you pass away, it'll actually step up the basis and you've avoided entirely paying those taxes. You don't have to recapture it.
It's a wrap. We're done. No, and that is one of the big things when it comes to planning. Some people know, some people don't. Yeah. And that's one way that you can save and really protect your wealth instead of paying it to the government. So
that's right. And you need to have
explain that beautifully.
Thank you. And you need to have an advocate like Buky on your side who's actually going to show you the game plan. There's a lot of people out there who are order takers, right? You go to the CPA and you say, do my taxes. So they just do your taxes the way that they would do it. But what if that's not what's in your best interest, right? It's a different kind of duty, depending on who you're speaking to. A realtor, as an example, has a fiduciary responsibility to always act in your best interest. So anything that we say is coming from a perspective of, I mean, I've even been in a position where I argued my way out of a commission. I was like, look, I will sell your house if you really decide to do that, but I think you're better off doing X, Y, or Z with this house. Usually that means turning it into a rental. And so now it's not in my best interest because I wanted my commission, but it was in the client's best interest.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, the big things that's different with us as a team and how we work with our clients. Inventory is really low. We all want inventory. But on the flip side, just like you said, I have talked people out of selling a home because it's in their best wealth building interest to hold on to it, rent out that property, buy the next one.
That's right.
So,
and another thing that I think you provide, another thing that you bring to the table is those connections, right? If someone hasn't established an estate plan by this point in their lives, there's a good chance they don't even know an estate attorney. They wouldn't know a good one from a bad one, right? Someone who's got a lot of experience versus someone who just got their license. So that's another one of the benefits is that you are able to bring together a team who can work cohesively towards the client's best interests. Right?
And you made me think of this. I've talked to people where mom and dad want to or have added a child to the deed of the property. And the child now owns that property with mom and dad. And then mom and dad pass away. And now that child is responsible for the taxes that date back to when the property was purchased. So imagine buying a property 30, 40 years ago for $100,000 and now it's worth $1 million. Now you're responsible for all of those taxes. Instead of the taxes from the time of death.
That's right. And there are ways to solve that without having to sell the house. Right? And they're not going to know that. They might just be so overwhelmed by it that they either do nothing and get in trouble with the IRS for not paying what was due, right? Or they panic sell sometimes to an investor who's giving them pennies on the dollar.
Right.
So, especially because we don't know where these properties necessarily are located. What if your kid moved over to LA, but you're still here in Virginia? They're not going to want to move into your house necessarily, right? They've already established a life for themselves.
And that's a great point that you bring up, because that's another conversation that you do this too, don't you?
I do.
No, it's a great point, because that's another one of the conversations. Imagine mom and dad owning properties here in Virginia.
Yeah.
Children live in Florida and California, and there's one in Hawaii. They don't want to be landlords to properties here in Virginia. And one of the things that mom and dad can do is sell those properties and allow the kids to choose their own inheritance where they live. So you 1031 exchange into the properties that the kids choose in their areas, and then you get to see them enjoy it as well before they die.
Yes.
And then, or before you die. And when you do, they're not fighting over who gets what.
Right.
Because you can't split real estate. You know, if your parents own a house, when they're gone, you can't split that in half, and you take half and your sister takes half. And even if they own two properties, how do you choose which sibling gets which property? I mean, most of the time the values aren't exactly the same.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So this is one way to do that.
It's a whole bag of snakes to be leaving your kids.
Yeah.
Right.
And even if they don't fight now, they love each other. Think of when mom and dad are gone. There's a whole lot of stress and grief that they have to deal with. And then their lives are usually different.
Yeah.
Maybe one of them just started a new business and needs a cash infusion and wants to sell the home. And the other one is emotionally tied to it and wants to rent it out.
Yeah.
Or keep it empty. You know, then they have those fights.
Yeah.
So you can prevent
and
that.
And then sometimes you even have situations where you want to exercise what we call dead hand control over the beneficiaries of your estate, which is to say something like, I will give Johnny X, Y, or Z when he finishes college.
Yes.
Or something like, I will do this only if he remains sober for the next 10 years.
Especially if Johnny's a drunk or a drug addict or 18 years old.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So there are also questions like that might need to be addressed. And the only way to do that is to have a proper plan, get an attorney, make sure that you're doing everything clean as a whistle. But of course, the biggest expense, the biggest investment that most people make throughout their whole life is their home. It is the real estate.
Their real estate.
And so if you don't have that piece covered, then you're just asking for trouble for your family, right?
Yeah, I agree. So you said something earlier, I can't remember now what it was, but it made me think of having the conversation early.
Yes.
So there are people that are proactive, and then there are reactive people. And the reactive people, they make a plan when life happens. They fall down the stairs maybe.
Yeah.
And now they have to move into a place that doesn't have stairs or where they need care.
Yeah.
But they haven't planned for it. They don't know where the money's coming from. They don't know which community they're going to. Versus the proactive person who knows, well, if I sell one of my rental properties, I can take that money, or I can do a reverse mortgage, or I can, they have options and they know what their options are. They also know what their options are as far as where they're moving to, whether it's a retirement community, assisted living, independent living, depending on their medical condition, if it's a medical a community that assists them with medical needs. So they have that plan in place. So when life happens, they already know what's going on. And life happens a lot, too, when one spouse dies, and then the other is left to deal with the house and everything in the house all by themselves.
Yeah.
So
what do you do if one spouse has been handling all the financials and is now not in the picture?
Yeah.
Not only is the income irreplaceable, but what about just the knowledge? What was my password to log in and pay my utilities?
Yeah.
I don't know that. Right?
And state attorneys, when they help you put your plan together, those are some of the things that they address.
Yeah.
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 So I'm not an attorney. I don't go through those things, but I can help guide people to the right person so that they get all those things in place.
Yeah. And again, the conversation looks different depending upon where you are in your life. If you're an empty nester where your kids just finally went off to college and now you have this huge mortgage that you're paying for a great big house that you don't necessarily use, and it's more upkeep than you can manage because you're getting older, your joints start to hurt. You don't want to have to go, manage that yard. You don't have to manage that yard all by yourself.
Why are you talking about my joints?
Or maybe you're living in a townhouse that's in the more inner city, and you have to climb up and down stairs every day just to get from your bedroom to your kitchen.
Everyone's moving into these 4-level houses with the rooftops these days.
And that's good for one moment in your life, and less good when your knees start to go.
Yes.
Right? So having the foresight to know what housing situation is appropriate for this moment in your life, and planning ahead, because if you make the switch now, it's easier than 10 years from now when appreciation and prices go through the roof and the dollar's not what it used to be. So having the foresight to think ahead a few steps and to put your boots in the right dirt today can be a big difference maker.
Yeah. Be proactive.
Right.
Be proactive. Don't let life dictate what you have to do.
Yeah.
So if you have a plan in place, it makes the transition so much easier.
Yeah. And ask the questions. Just because you don't feel the pain now doesn't mean there's not a cancer growing.
Right.
You need to be proactive and go have a checkup, right? Schedule an appointment with Buky and let her ask you the questions that you don't even know you should have asked, right? Oftentimes, opportunities come to those who are just in the right room at the right time. And so in the same way that you would go see a doctor to have a checkup, and lo and behold, they discover something, they discover it early, and now it's just a molehill, not a mountain. Versus you let it go, and you let it go until the pain is so much that now you have to face it.
Now you need surgery and rehab.
Now they give you the, you've got 6 months doctor's note.
And then you're on life support.
And we joke because we're so far from it now, but we've had clients who are there. That's where they find themselves. And for them, it's no laughing matter, right?
No.
So it is important that we all realize that we are in the game of life. Like it's happening, and it's happening now.
It's not stopping.
It's not waiting for us, right? You don't get to reset at the last checkpoint.
But here's the good news. We've all beat our record of the most number of days we've ever lived.
I like that. I've got a new high score today. I made it another day.
Yeah.
Elize, you made it another day of tolerating me. That's Buky golf clapping.
No, but she loves you.
I think so. I think so. I mean, she hasn't put the pillow over my head yet, so.
Yet.
But
she could.
I mean.
She could, and if she finds herself in that position.
You'll take care of her?
Yeah.
I don't recommend it. I tried and I died in this scenario.
But here you are.
Yeah.
It didn't stick.
So what kinds of questions might you start with if you were sitting down to do one of these reviews with someone?
So I always ask now, I always make sure to ask if they have a plan in place. And that's anyone. You could be 82 or 32, 22. Right. Do you have your plan in place?
Well, let's role model a little bit. All right. So you just asked me if I have a plan in place, and I'm going to say no. All right. So what else? What other information would you like to know?
So then I'd like to know, is there a reason why you don't have a plan in place? Have you ever thought about it, or did you just not know?
I've just been so busy, Buky. I bought a house. I got married. I've got a kid on the way. I've just been busy.
Yeah. So you have a kid on the way.
Yeah.
And if something were to happen with you, would you not want that kid to be protected and have all the best that
Well, of course I would want my child to be protected. Although I don't have life insurance. I'm going to need to get that.
Yeah. Get that. I have a life insurance person if you want one.
Well, luckily I have your number, so we'll figure it out.
You know where to reach me. But yeah, and I get it. We're all busy. And yet we need to slow down and just put some things in place. At least have the conversation with the estate attorney or the estate planner.
Okay.
Just have the conversation and then let them guide you from there. But it's something that it's easier to do when you have less.
Gotcha.
And, I don't know what you have or don't have, but the point being...
Let's say I've just got the one property that I'm living in now.
Yeah. Imagine having to do it when you have 80 properties.
Well, that's my goal, Buky.
Is it?
Maybe that's the conversation you would help me. For someone in my position, you might be like, well, let's help you get your next one.
Yeah. Yeah. And, with what we do already, we're helping people plan for their next properties and, build the wealth. And the conversations that I'm having have to do with protecting the wealth as well. So starting with having your plan in place, even having a beneficiary for your bank account is important. I learned many years ago from a college friend who is an attorney, and at one point she had an estate planning business in Virginia. She's in California now. But she told me, she said her cousin's father passed away, and her cousin had a debit card that her father had given her for the account that she used. It was her account. It was his, but it was hers. But once he passed away, that account was shut down because she wasn't listed on the account or as a beneficiary. She just had privileges to the account. And his Social Security or some sort of something was going into that account, and that's what paid her school fees. So all of that came to a halt.
Her whole life got disrupted.
Yeah. It eventually worked out, but it took time.
It took time, it took money,
it took money.
It took lawyers.
Yeah.
Look, the lawyers are getting involved.
Yeah.
Either up front or
on the
later on the back end. The question is, do you want to be the one to deal with it, or do you want to leave that for your kids?
And I think it's cheaper. It's more cost effective when you do it up front because you're just putting the plan in place, and those documents dictate what happens after you're gone.
Yeah.
Or if you're incapacitated.
And there's even scenarios where prevention makes a huge difference, where it just can't be rectified. Sometimes there's just no fixing problems because once it's done, and you got to follow through with whatever was decided.
Yeah.
Right? Like with a house fire, once the house burns down, there's no correcting that problem. Some bridges can be burned.
Yeah.
So you do need to be really careful. With what happens.
Yeah.
So as an example, had you wanted to leave something to someone and you pass away without the will, without the trust, without any way of leaving it to that person, and that person's not in the government's plan, then they have no claim.
No.
And there's no way to go back and fix that.
No.
Right.
No. And it's so important to have those documents because there are people that don't want to leave things to their family.
Oh, the reverse problem.
There's that too. And if their family's next of kin or,
Yeah, or if you had charitable giving you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. If you hate your family and you have a best friend that you want to leave everything to. And, and I say that.
That exists.
Yeah, it does exist.
There are estranged,
it really does.
Estranged family members, right?
Yeah. So you have to put the plan into place in writing.
Yeah.
And make sure that what you want to happen is what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Hello Haymarket with Queen Alubakala. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon. Oh, wait. And if anyone wants to get in touch with her, how would you like them to do that?
So you can call me, 703-400-8932, or you can follow me on Instagram at Buky Delle, Bukyddelle. And same thing on Facebook.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. All right,
Thank you.
Bye.